Hi folks, today I bring to you proof of concept about the possible to reuse a panel
SANYO
CD-S800U panel. This panel uses LC866556B processor whose technical sheet can be found on the web. As we don't have access to the microcontroller resident code, we are limited to the trial error, as we can rely on 14 types interrupts alone. However, we can implement the necessary conditions for the carrying out the initial panel tests. Therefore, we need to implement the plus 5 volts DC on the 3 panel connectors, as well as a GND on the GND points. The connector pins are clearly identified, however, as the service manual is freely available on the web, it is always good to accompany it. We start with the connector CN602, where we have the pin V check. That pin must be set to the plus 5 volts DC trigger 2.2K resistance. Then F1 and F2 for the voltage of the filaments, and then a pin where we apply the less 36 volts for the voltage of the segments and grids. That voltage must reach the pin 51 brackets, VP brackets. The microcontroller turns out to be a processor with a VFD driver that makes use of some pins that control the grids and the segment internal and directly. Similar microcontrollers appears in mini sounds by Haya, Sony, Pioneer, etc. After all, as soon as one appears in the market, it was quickly replicated by the competitors. I highlighted here that the panel has 2 serial communication ports, but as I don't know the resident code, I have no idea what message are expected by the microcontroller. Maybe Samyon has one idea of the expected message format and can post it in the comments. After creating necessary conditions for the panel to be able to initialize, we are faced with one extraordinary sequence of the tests in the VFD. It is a well-executed animation testing LEDs and the segments. It was easy to find the service manual on the web, but I couldn't find the instructions of the compact sound. To polarize the panel, you use 2 completely independent 5 volts DC power supplies. This could be power banks, for example. I liked this detail because the impedance of the source is fundamental and has already been mentioned in many other videos. As the panel requires a negative voltage of 36 volts, 2 DC-DC converters are used, one for 24 and other to 12 volts. They are associated in series. If we only use one of the 24 volts, it works. I use both converters to be a didactic example. Once again, I warn you, these two converters are isolated between the blocks of input and output. Total isolated. In other words, they do not have common pins or reference between blocks because this is only way to can associate them in the serials. The models used are B0524S and B0512S. The isolation indication between blocks is represented by the letter S. Of course, it is always possible to use other feeding methods. We have already covered this topic in the previous videos, and if you have any doubts, I suggest watching these videos on how to feed the VFDs. You can see here the both blocks, DC-DC converters. Here, both diodes used to power the filaments, and I draw a little block, a little draw where we can find both DC converters, 24 and 12, the 5 volts DC through two diodes to the filament, and the 5 volts DC, the second power source, to power up the both converters and at the same time provide the 5 volts logics to the processor. The blocks DC-DC are implemented in serial, and you can see the plus is connected to the ground. This is the same point, and this way you reach 36 negative volts here to this point. The panel requires also 12 volts DC, but I not provide it because at the stage this is not important.